think you should.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Whoscussion. Again, I apologise, guys, with Part B always being chirpier. But unfortunately, this other cookie has been crumbling lately. We're going to be doing the Book of Kells, which is the next 8th Doctor story after our Nevermore story from last week. Then following that up with Deimos, which is part 1 of a 2-part story, which we'll be finishing next week. And then The Monkey House, which is a 5th Doctor short trip. So the Book of Kells takes us to the year 1006 in Ireland. It's obviously about the historical text, the Book of Kells, heralded as the most beautiful version of the Bible. And I hadn't actually heard of it until we did this story. I wasn't familiar with this text at all, so I then watched a 3-hour documentary about the Book of Kells before coming back and listening to this. I was like, oh! And Big Finish actually knew what they were talking about, unlike a certain other version of Doctor Who that takes place in historical times, sometimes. And in 1006, the book is supposed to go missing. And the Doctor's like, oh, well, we're in this right time. He doesn't know for the first half of the story, for the first half of the story, if that makes sense. Yeah. If you're listening to the audiobook rip of the story, it is the first half of part 1. I don't know if this is on Spotify. Again, we're going to be posting Spotify as the top link in the posts, in the comments this week, just because it's so amazing they're on Spotify and people can have that gateway into Doctor Who, the best version of Doctor Who that's currently out. Hashtag not an ad, hashtag should be. So Doctor and his new companion Tamsin, who's using her real name now, they overhear a plot that they kind of miss here, and it's great because they're like, oh, these guys are the bad guys, but that actually isn't true. But they don't know that yet. But it seems like they're the bad guys. There's a Norwegian fella who's like, hey, come out of the back corridor there, Tamsin. Now, Tamsin earlier had fallen into some gunk, and she walks out. And he's like, oh my god, it's a Valkyrie. So he gaps it. And she's like, what is it? Oh my goodness, I must have scared him off. And the Doctor's like, yeah, you look like a mythological Norwegian creature. And that's why he ran away.
Flower right now.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she happens to fall into a ditch, but it's not a ditch. It's an old type of medieval plumbing.
It's a manure pit. It's not for human. It's not for human excrement. It's for
that's interesting, because a couple of the articles I read about them, people did use them in some communities as well.
Yeah.
Was it designed initially for farming animals?
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Oh, yuck.
That's why the Doctor says it's for manure.
So,
but if it was also for human people, then that's even more disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she's not having a good time, and they're just like, oh, don't worry, the rain will wash it off. I was like, Doctor, have you ever stepped in shit before? That's not going to work. And so, so they go off and they head up to this monastery, and they're just like, okay, this is the monastery. They're gonna do something with books here. We're gonna stop their plot. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna pretend to be a nun. What are you gonna do? And he's like, I'm gonna sneak in. She's like, okay. So they split up, which is obviously the worst thing to do, but I like it that they did that, because it's like Tamsin's run has been the most sort of whimsical and charming, I think, of the 8th Doctor's run. She's only been in this is her 3rd story, and it really does have that feel, right? That sort of fantastical feel. I really like it. I think these are adventures that Izzy probably would have went on as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
The pre her body being switched era, of course. And so Tamsin goes to, she's like, I'm a nun from a nunnery. And they're like, oh, okay. And she's like, yes, I'm a nun. And there's like people's quoting scripture, and she's like, oh, that's a nice poem. Did you write it? He's like, no, it's from the Bible. Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh, of course. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I remember it's in one of those books. Yep. And the doctor sneaks in, and he's like, yeah! And he sees that one of the monks that he saw talking to the Norwegian fella earlier. And goes, you're the bad guy! And the monk's like, no, I'm not. And he's like, yes, you are. You're talking to the Norwegian guy. And then he's like, no, I'm really not the bad guy. I don't think you understand what you're talking about. The doctor's like, I'm right all the time. I'm the doctor. You're evil. And then he sees this, like, and then...
Says the man who's frequently wrong.
Yeah, says the man who's frequently wrong. And so, the young... so Tamsin ends up getting whisked away by one of the younger people in the parish. And he's having a chat with her, and he's like, oh, yeah, so what church are you from? She's like, oh, a church from London. Yeah, that's where I'm from. I'm from one of those churches. Like, oh, okay. She's like, oh, which one? He's like, oh, you know, a big one. And then he gets knocked out, and she's like, what's going on? And then she gets pushed down a chute. I presume it must be one of the monk escape chutes from when they used to get invaded. And so she falls down, and the doctor's like, you're an evil bad guy. And the monk's like, I am not the bad guy. I really think you've got your wires. Doog! He gets knocked out. The doctor's like, what the hell? You knocked out the bad guy. And she's like, oh, well, yeah, thanks. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll help you up. And then she's actually not only knocked him out, but pushed him through a wall. So
Yeah.
she's used him as like a ram into this other room. The doctor's like, oh my goodness, it's got Time Lord stuff in it. He must be the monk. And she's like, oh my gosh, is that a baddie? And he's like, sure is. And she's like, oh, hey, the Book of Kells is fully getting stolen. So, oh, who? Oh, this person called Brother Lucianus. And then he's like, oh, can you go get it back? And she's like, oh, all right. And he's like, I'm going to tie this guy up and interrogate him. And he ties him up. And then he comes back, and what's his name? Brother Bernard. And Brother Bernard wakes up, and he's one of my favorite actors. He's in Downton Abbey. He's the butler, the head of the house. And I absolutely love this actor. So hearing his voice, I was like, oh my God! Clapping. And he wakes up, he's like, I'm Brother Bernard. I'm a monk. And the doctor's like, ha ha ha, you're the monk. And he's like, no, I'm a monk. So I really don't think you understand what's happening here. And the doctor's like, but look at all this Time Lord technology. This belongs to you. And he's like, okay, so you find me in a room, and you find something behind a secret wall, and you presume because I'm in the same room as the secret wall, I know what was behind the secret wall? I was like, oh. He's like,
totally.
Yeah, you're the bad guy. He goes, hang on, I'm going to use my stethoscope. So he pulls out his stethoscope, and he listens. He's like, you've only got one heart. And he's like, yes, I have only got one heart. I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. And he's like, yeah, you must be crazy, because I've never been to Egypt or a volcano. And I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry. Yeah, okay. We need to go find out who the real bad guy is. And so they go off, and it becomes Scooby-Doo. It just becomes Scooby-Doo. And I love it. I think Big Finish has handled it a lot better than another version of Doctor Who that tried a Scooby-Doo scene. Really, I don't know which one I'm talking about. Oh my gosh. I love in monsters. And so, they're like, okay, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. And so, Thingamabob is capturing Brother Lucianus, and Tamsin grabs the Book of Kells off Brother Lucianus, and then the Norwegian guy who's working for by the way, the king of, the king's turned up. He's the current king of Dublin. He's turned up, and his assistant was the guy that was working with Brother Bernard, because they thought someone was going to steal the Book of Kells because the king was coming. So they were trying to make sure that didn't happen, because they were like, if that happens, a civil war will break out between the guy who wants power and the king. So they've actually been the good guys this whole time. They think that Tamsin, what did she call herself? Sister? Was it Sister? It was Sister something.
I cannot remember for the life of me.
Yeah, and because she's an actress, she just pulls her hat out of a name out of thin air, and they're like well, we can't kill her. She's a nun, but we cut her hand off because she's a thief. And she's like, I literally wasn't the one trying to steal the Book of Kells. And they're like, well, who? And the doctor, they're like, oh, you killed Brother Bernard. And she's like, I didn't kill... What? Who told you that? And then Brother Bernard bursts in. He's like, I'm alive. And the doctor's like, hey, Tamsin. And they're like, who's this guy? And she's like, you remember earlier I said I had an apothecary? Yeah, that's my apothecary. Oh, so you're not a liar. No. Brother Lucianus was trying to steal everything. And then Brother Lucianus and the abbot, who turns out to actually be the monk, are like, ha 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 ha, we're the bad guys. And the king's like, oh no, you bloody don't. So they manage to take the Book of Kells off them, and the doctor messes with their TARDIS, and they go spiraling off into the ether. And the doctor's like, yeah, I stole a pretty important part of his TARDIS, so let's go.
Well, yeah, pretty much. But it's also because Tamsin does kind of trick him into taking the wrong piece back as well.
The wrong piece back to his TARDIS. So, because the doctor gets real angry. He's like, Tamsin, you've allowed him to destroy everything. She's like, yeah, I fully made a copy, and he's got the fake one.
I'm actually way smarter than that.
Yeah, I'm actually a good companion. So, and I was like, oh, you actually are a good companion. She's like, yeah, I am. And so, and that's the end of that. And it's great because it's another monk story. It's the first time the monk's been in live action media for a while, because he's been in books up until now since his first run as the Peter Butters monk. I love the Peter Butters monk, like, so much. And the doctor's like, oh well, his TARDIS is buggered, let's go. And that's the end of that. Harry Scully, what are your thoughts on the Book of Kells?
It was really solid. I love the monk. He plays it perfectly well. It's nice to have previous enemies come back and do stuff all the time. It's always a pleasure. It's a solid episode. I really like it. I can't wait for more, basically. Especially next episode. Next episode.
yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to where the monk story takes us, considering the monk appears to have been the person that ran the earlier ad. Because the doctor's like, hey, you're the renegade. So he must have placed the ad that led Tamsin to being his companion.
Possibly.
Possibly. So I really like where this season of the 8th Doctor's run. I always find that weird 26B has seasons inside itself. But I like where this is going. I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. And with that, we're going to jump into our final 8th Doctor story for this week. Deimos, take us away.
Oh yeah, Deimos. So, this episode. Okay, so this starts off with an interesting introduction. Where we basically are hearing a voiceover of the description of what happens with the Ice Warriors and their and the disaster event that happens on Mars and causes them to go into hiding and all that sort of stuff. So we hear that it turns out we're actually hearing a tour guide sort of deal, as some people are inside as there are people who are inside the caverns, who are going through this like sort of museum tour of what's happened to the Ice Warriors, even though they still haven't completely explored all the caverns. Yeah, not sure that was a good idea.
Probably not the smartest idea.
Yeah, probably not the smartest idea. But anyway, these two, they're not like elderly. They're just sort of
they were definitely retired though.
Yeah, they seem like they were retired in some way. But anyway, they the things that they were going on holiday as well. It wasn't like retirement, so I don't think they were retired. I think they're just like that's just their people. But anyway, they are doing this tour. They see some Ice Warriors down the end of the corridor and think, oh, there's like a performance going on. Cool. Another guy who's like real like antsy, sort of touristy, like wants to take pictures of everything, wants to get all up and stuff in the business. He decides to go right up to them and ask for a picture, and they shoot him with a sonic blaster because they're real Ice Warriors, and everyone freaks out. And it's like, oh, who would have thought this was coming? I
love the older couple though. They're like, oh, those are pretty fancy costumes. They kill their guy. They're like, oh my word.
So then that entire tourist group gets loaded into a escape pod, I guess is the idea, and get shipped off. Are going to get shipped back to the moon. So basically, what the deal is there is the moon of one of the moons of Mars, Deimos, is the museum basically of the Ice Warriors, and that's where the Doctor and Tamsin go. But there are on Mars is where the tourist group happens, and they've been loaded into a ship and are going to the moon base. That's what's happening there, which is on Deimos. The Doctor and Tamsin are having a bit of a time. They've landed again, not where they want to go, but some reason Tamsin seems like she doesn't care anymore. I guess she's just over.
I love
the Doctor's excuses.
I love that the Doctor goes, oh, the something to do with there's a Eddie in the time vortex, and she's like, stop saying that, and it's great because the Eighth Doctor always says that.
Yeah, he's always off on a time Eddie. It's always the case. So anyway, so what the deal is he gets there, he's exploring this museum because of course there's the Doctor, he's interested in stuff, sees the Ice Warrior stuff, and he's immediately like, no, that's wrong, because obviously he is. There's a tour group shows up, and apparently the leader of the tour group is the person who found this all out. Man, times must be hard for him if he's having to do tourist cruise. But anyway, he as soon as the Doctor starts correcting him, he's just like, what?
How dare you, sir?
How dare you? Yeah. And then Tamsin makes the mistake of trying to explain their location, and doesn't quite work out as well as it should. So they get brought off to the security office to get interrogated, all that sort of stuff. But while they're there, they hear over the intercom that the ship with real Ice Warriors on board is coming to the moon base, and they're like, oh, pull the other one. But then over the comms, you hear the Ice Warriors that have captured them, and the Doctor's like, well, okay, let me fix some stuff up right here. And fixes up their their infrared scanner to be able to pick up Ice Warrior life signs, and it goes from there basically. They've realized now that they're actually Ice Warriors. They wake up the actual security supervisor. She comes and takes a look just as they're about to start actually talking to the Ice Warriors. They go on visual, and she's just like, "Oh my god, okay, real Ice Warriors. What do we do? We don't have any weapons or any of the stuff." And the Doctor's like, "Science stuff. Actual science advisors. The way that we power these ships is to use extreme microwave bursts to power them up, which is basically it isn't a very efficient way of charging things over a long distance, because you can focus narrow beams of energy into something and then it absorbs them. It makes sense. It's
no kidding
how things work in the future.
Well done.
So
big finish
with the science advisors. Anyway, so cool stuff. But the Doctor immediately is like, hey, we can use that to our advantage as a kind of weapon, but is pointing it not exactly where it's supposed to be, and basically heating up the entire shuttle, which would obviously kill any Ice Warriors that are on board. He threatens to basically kill them by the shot over the bow, slightly warm them up to show them that they can do it, and obviously the Ice Warriors are not particularly happy about that, and they're like, hey, what was that all about? And the Doctor's like, you know the reason. Come on,
it's me, the Doctor.
Yeah, it's me, the Doctor. So yeah, Doctor tries to actually talk to them, find out what they want, and tries to do all this stuff. But Ice Warriors being Ice Warriors don't just want to chat. They just want to kill everything and blow everything, because that's the kind of thing that happens for them every time they wake up. They are really cranky when.
Yeah, because like whenever they wake up, though, they're always the ones that were during the war. And they're like,
yeah,
hey, is the war still going on?
Yeah, they're the ones that are so angry, so angry. It's really funny that that's just the case. Like, well, no, there's been a bunch of wars as well. So these are the ones that actually were on Mars during the ecological event. But as soon as they woke up, they're just like, we just want to take everything. We're angry. It's us. And the Doctor's like, I've seen your future. You're going to be fine. Just let me help you. And they're like, no, we're going to fight everybody. And it's like, oh, really? Every time? Okay.
Yeah, but the Doctor's seen their far future as well, and they become destitute.
No. That's only in one system.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's only one system.
They become another spanning empire.
Oh yeah, because they joined the Federation, eh?
Exactly. So he knows that they become they become better and stuff. They become good. So anyway, so point is, he tries to help, doesn't quite work out. He's like, okay, fine, I'll just go over there. He gets on a spacesuit, doesn't, because he needs a spacesuit, totally, Thank you. Anyway, he gets on a spacesuit. That time the Fifth
Doctor wore one? Oh, wait.
Anyway, he goes out to the pod. He uses Sonic to open up the door, because this was 4. Gets in the door, in the airlock, and it's like, hey, let all the hostages go, you can take me. And they're like, oh, so you're important then, we'll shoot you. And they shoots him, and it's like, oh, really? This should happen way more often than it does. But anyway. So the Doctor apparently is dead from a sonic blast. But anyway, before he left Tamsin with some instructions to basically shut off the microwave emitter so that it doesn't, so that the crazy security lead doesn't try to use it on the Doctor. And she totally tries to do that. And then we move on to part 2, where it doesn't work. Only slightly heats up the place and manages to save them. They get back to the moon base finally, where Tasman has been captured by. Well, she was there with the professor, and the professor is the one who actually turned off the microwave because he wants to keep the Ice Warriors alive as part of whatever rationale he thinks. Mainly because he's completely mistranslated a whole lot of the Ice Warrior stuff, which means he thinks that they're way more merciful than they are. So it's kind of on his end. Anyway, so Tasman gets locked up. The Doctor gets back with the Ice Warriors, because he's actually not dead, because his suit managed to stop the spacesuit managed to stop the sonic waves from getting to him. He basically captures and pseudo tortures an Ice Warrior. He just doesn't let him out of the airlock until he goes unconscious.
Yeah, pseudo torturing.
Pseudo torturing. Who explains that the reason why they've gone to the moon is for the device that humans were going to use to terraform Mars, but they didn't get the funds to do it, so they've just left it on the moon base. So the Ice Warriors have come to switch it on to fix Mars basically for themselves, which there is the problem that the science visor would have fixed, is the fact that it doesn't matter how much stuff you do to fix the atmosphere of Mars. They literally don't have a magnetic field anymore, and that's why it's kind of broke, because there's no mixing of stuff going on under the crust anymore. So the only real viable way to use Mars as an actual terraform planet would be to live in domes.
Which is what Mars One's plan is, right? Is to live in domes.
And it's what they're currently doing in story, is they're living in domes because they just gave up on trying to do this, which is fair. They shouldn't have tried to do it in the first place. But anyway, the Ice Warriors are going to try and do it. But even if it doesn't work, obviously it's still going to try and convert the atmosphere, which is going to destroy all of the atmospheric stuff going on already on Mars, which means killing all the people. So the Doctor's not particularly happy about that, as he generally isn't. So he tries to stop everybody. He finds the other security guard, and he's basically had a bit of a time after the professor backstabs him, basically shoots him in the leg, as they tried to do some stuff with the environmental stuff to try and make it inhabitable for the Ice Warriors. But the professor, being crazy, means he's turned the temperature down to help the Ice Warriors. So he's trying to help them, but then when he goes through with this helping of them, he mistranslates his mistranslation to them, and actually we're ruthless. And he's just like, oh, well,
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I should have listened to the Doctor before. Anyway, so the Doctor gets, I'm gonna just gotta call him Sergeant Benton because he kind of acts like Sergeant Benton, and gets him to get Tamsin out of lockup and set us up the bomb to save the soul.
Make your time, Ice Warriors.
Yeah. So he sets us up the bomb, and with Tamsin, he gives Tamsin the detonator, says, hey, use it. Also, tell my ex-wife she gets my life insurance, all that sort of stuff, because he's being cool, brave, and Sergeant Benton-like. And they run off. They run off to get into the shuttle, and all that stuff happens. Meanwhile, the Doctor's still trying to convince the Ice Warriors to lay down their weapons. Don't know why he continues to try. He gets the professor to basically sabotage the ionizing weapon, but not before they find out and basically kill him. And the doctor's like, oh, okay, sweet, I'm out of here. He leaves. Gets on board the shuttle just in time with Tamsin, but Sergeant Benton doesn't make it, and they leave the moon. And yeah, it's kind of where it sort of starts to go, oh crap, all right. And Tamsin's like, hey, I've got this detonator, we need to use it to stop the Ice Warriors, even though I'm really angry about the fact that we left Sergeant Benton behind because I really liked him. And the doctor's like, I don't really want to blow it up. And security officer, you need to blow it up. Fighting with each other. Tamsin's sort of on that side as well. And then the pilot, who is voiced by a fantastic voice actor. It's fantastic, the pilot. He sounds exactly like he should have been in Top Gun. But anyway.
Right? That random American accent coming through.
It's so great. But anyway, he's like, hey, you get a text message, Doctor. And he's like, what? A text message? And he's like, yeah, it says, hey, it's Lucy Miller. I'm stuck on Deimos. I need you to come and get me, Doctor. Yeah.
Damn, son. Digga. That's so good. The Doctor's just like, what? Man, I should have spent another 600 years on Orbis and forgotten all about you. Like I did to Floyd's favorite companion. Like he did to my favorite companion. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna grab your thoughts before I finish up, because I quite like this one.
Yeah. I really do like it. I love the Ice Warriors as an idea. I love seeing their different parts of their history take place. It's really good, honestly. Tamsin's a fantastic companion doing fantastic things. I like all the other characters that we see fleshed out. The two vacationers, they have this fantastic interaction. They get built up really well with this idea that like they're on their vacation, they didn't expect anything crazy to happen, and then crazy things start happening. But they do their best to try and like get out of the situation as well, like real thinking, feeling humans. Like he the male guy he knows enough about technology to know that there's like a hearing aid communications suite in the pods, so he uses it to basically tap into the communications array to get that the first initial communication out. Using that knowledge to not only move the story along, but to develop him as an actual forward-thinking character. And it plays really well into later things where he's worried about the Doctor, worried about his wife, all that sort of stuff. There's so much substance to this, and it's like, where is that in the live action?
Right? Exactly.
That's my feel on it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think the couple that we're introduced to in the beginning of part 1 for the story are absolutely fantastic. They act like people. I know that seems like a really dumb thing to say, but after the stuff we've watched in part A, they actually act like actual human beings. I love that they're both level-headed, and the wife's like, look, I know you can like probably help us out here, but I don't want you to get in over your head. And he's like, oh, well, let's look at it this way. We've got to think about everyone and not just ourselves. And he's like a human doctor in that aspect, where he's trying to put, his livelihood is not more important than somebody else's. And
exactly.
I really wish that we had that happen more on the actual show. Absolutely, yeah. That would be great. But hey, we're just some guys with a podcast, we don't have any clout with the actual show itself. And as Harriet Skelly's said in the past, and I definitely echo his sentiment, that I think New Who really could have benefited from being revived by Big Finish. Yeah, absolutely. Because definitely, because BBC had already given them the license, to do Doctor Who. Why not just give them Doctor Who? Pretty much. It really doesn't make sense as to why they didn't span out like that, basically, because they do such a
such a great job with it as well. Like it still doesn't make sense why they haven't got it now. Like they've been given such reign with it already and they haven't just like decided to move on to giving it to them fully.
Yeah, because they've got the new series license now. They basically do make New Who, just without the visual aspect. So I'm perplexed as to why that never happened. And it's interesting because BBC are really pushing Big Finish, and they have been since the Davros Complete Collection. BBC are like, they really are a viable monetary option. And I'm like, man, I wish you guys saw that when you gave them the license back in 1999. Like, when you're thinking about bringing it back, if I was Julie Gardner, I would have went straight to them, not Russell T.
Pretty much.
Like, yeah, Russell's a wonderful drama writer, but Doctor Who isn't just a drama. Like,
no, it's very much not a drama.
Yeah,
in fact.
So I really don't understand the mentality behind it. And stories like this, where the characters are just... I mean, Big Finish just seems to flesh out characters that, like, you wouldn't think necessarily needed to be fleshed out, but they do it, and not in a way that detracts from the main sort of gut of the story. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And I was actually more engaged with them than I was the Doctor and Tamsin. Not in a negative way. I think the Doctor and Tamsin definitely were important, integral cogs to the overall machine of the story. But I felt like it was that couple's story.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was.
Yeah,
and that's the greatness of Big Finish at the moment, is that they latch onto a character and then sell that, and that's actually way better. Like, in all honesty, it is way better for the story if you play it like that. So
yeah, I have to agree with you there. This story, I'm unaware if it's on their Spotify. It may be. Definitely check their Spotify out. But if it's not, this story is only like $3. It is a two-parter, so you will have to buy the second half, which I can't remember what that's called. Oh, The Resurrection of Mars. This story also talks about Phobos. You don't have to have listened to Phobos, but I thought it was really nicely handled.
The nice references to Phobos, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, the elderly couple, they're just a bunch of hippies. You know, it was like, yeah, they are a bunch of hippies. I remember that story now. And it was like, it's absolutely fantastic. But Big Finish are able to keep their continuity tight, and I just don't understand how New Who can't. Because Big Finish have more than just the Doctor Who monthly range. They've got the 8th Doctor adventures, they've got short trips, they've got the Gallifrey series, they've got so much going on, and yet they're still able to understand their own continuity and are able to preserve the continuity of the show. And it just, like, I don't understand how people who are clearly getting paid way more than Big Finish aren't able to put in that same amount of work.
Yeah, that's very odd.
Yeah, I don't understand the thought process behind that. But guys, I don't want to just be here bashing on New Who, because I mean there are some good stories in New Who. I haven't watched them again yet, but they're in there. They're in there somewhere. And with that, we're going to jump into our last story for today, which is The Monkey House. The Monkey House is done in the way that Harriet Scully and I tend to prefer, which is it's somebody else's story. Yeah. And this one is a lot more engaged with the Doctor than other short trips that are character focused. I have been. So if you look at it, what I mean by that is like Nissa's last short trip, or the Fifth Doctor's last short trip we did, was all about Nissa, and the Doctor was in maybe about a minute of it. But this one is definitely more, I wouldn't say centered around the Fifth Doctor, but he is definitely more integral than he was in that story. This is read by Stephen Critchlow, and I just love hearing him read stuff. I found out he does some audiobooks for Audible, so I am actually thinking of picking those up, because he is just a fantastic, I wouldn't say impressionist, but he's able to give you the sort of spirit of the character. But his Tom Baker is definitely impressionist. That sounds like Tom Baker. It just does.
It does. It absolutely does.
So it's about this multi-appendaged creature, where their nose is an additional arm. Correct me if I've I remember that description wrong, but I do.
I think that's kind of the case. They have
Yeah.
they have 2 additional arms, but also like a proboscis, which is like a face arm, basically.
Yeah, and the creatures actually remind me of this old 80s anime I watched with my wife in Mandarin. I don't know what it was called because I don't speak Mandarin, but they remind me of a creature in that. And so for me, I had that attachment of that character design on this character. And that's something I really do like about Big Finish is the budget is your own imagination.
Yeah.
So, like, the special effects are as good or as crusty as you can think up. For me, when I listen to the first 3 Doctors stuff, I make it as crusty as possible just because, like, I feel like that's their aesthetic. But yeah, so the monkey house is from this creature's point of view, and they visit a zoological center as a child, and they talk about how when they were much younger than they are now, and it appears they are very, very young, so maybe it's a fleeting memory from when they were a toddler. How, like, for me, sometimes I can remember my first days of kindergarten vividly.
Some days.
Yeah, some days. And so that's the sort of my thinking behind that description of events. And so she's like trying off pure remembrance, getting to this monkey house in the zoological center. She goes to the monkey house, and we find out pretty much instantly that it's actually a housing for sentient primates from planets they invade. Sorry, not invade. Planets that they, what is it? Educate, was it?
They culturally.
Oh,
they do something culturally.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
A cultural exchange. That's what it was.
That's the one.
They do a cultural exchange with planets, which is their politically correct way of saying invading.
Yeah.
And the Doctor and her have this. The Doctor knows her name.
Yeah.
And it's something that takes her very much aback. And that sort of stays with her because she gets taken away by her matriarch. Her matron. And that incident stays with her. One of my favorite things, though, is Stephen Critchlow does an incredible Tegan Javanka.
He really does.
And his Tegan was so great. What you looking at, Handy? And it was just like, I was just like, that's so Australian, and it's so Tegan. It's great, and I love Tegan. As people who've been following us for a while will know, Tegan is my favorite classic Who female companion. And so this creature, I can't remember her name. I think it might have been Manila.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I'm going to call her Manila for the remainder of this review. But so Manila keeps thinking and pondering about, hey, the Doctor, how did he know my name? So before she goes into the military academy, the Cultural Appropriation Academy, she goes back.
That's not really what it's called.
Yeah. She goes back to the Doctor and she wants to know more. And she's like, how did you know who I am? And he's just like, you'll know why. You will know why. And she's like, right. And what seems to be the case is they haven't aged a day.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the Doctor is intentionally trying to psychologically change her.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's doing some straight up, like, in a couple of regenerations, they want to be way more brutal about this sort of Seventh Doctor integration. And he's subtly changing her mindset. And she revisits after she graduates from the military academy. And she's like, all right, I want cards laid bare. And she manages to find out that he isn't from Earth, which is the next planet they intend to culturally appropriate. Exchange with, sorry. He's actually a Time Lord. And that she hits the roof. Because she knows that she knows about them. Their military academy knows about the medicine nature of the High Council of Gallifrey, and she hits the roof. And so her sort of fantastical, maybe even deification of the Doctor is shattered there. And it's just, I find it really interesting when short trips get deep. Like, I don't. It's like they're not always, but like when they get deep, like it's just wow. I think probably the her reaction reminds me a bit of. Do you remember that story where Thor and Romana are removed from the TARDIS and they have to look after that like warring race?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. And so like her reaction sort of reminds me of the guy who looked after them. And she's like, we're gonna go attack Earth. And he's like, oh, okay, cool, well, you have fun with that. And it turned out their scientific team hadn't done recent research on Earth, and they have these plants that basically do the cultural exchange for them. And the plants land on Earth and they don't gestate.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, and then Unit turns up and is like, hey guys, we're gonna arrest you now. And they're like, oh. And then Joe Grant turns up and Bessie. And she's like, oh, hello there. My friend said you were going to come. So hello, welcome to Earth.
Well,
would you like some crisps?
Not quite.
Oh no. Sorry, no. She says, I've got a friend that we usually deal with these sorts of things, but he's off world now. That's what it was.
Yeah, he's not here right now.
Yeah. And she's like, but would you like some crisps? And she's like, oh, okay. And like eats her like first chip. And she's like, oh, this is actually pretty great.
She's like, this is actually amazing.
Yeah, this is actually great. Wow, thank you. And so Joe's just like having a chinwag with her. And Milan's just like, hey, what is your friend's name? And she goes, oh, his name's the Doctor. And she's like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. You're from this is the Doctor's past. This is great because he's a Time Lord. This is great. So she goes back to who people are in, like, yeah, we need to stop this cultural exchange thing because it's actually way worse than I thought it was. They're not happy that we do it. So our whole like propaganda is total BS. Because their propaganda is like, they're really glad we invade them. Trust us. We're your government. So they have a complete... they have a cultural exchange, basically. They become a lot more humane. And they share sort of the hope the Third Doctor had. And it was... She comes back to the zoological center, and it's all decrepit now. And there's only the Doctor there. And she's like, hey, where is everybody? And he was like, oh, they're in my TARDIS. She's like, oh, is that what you call your sleeping shed? And he's like, yeah, oh, I suppose you could call it a sleeping shed. Yeah, all right. He's like, look, I'm really glad that you sort of bucked up your ideas. And she's like, is that literally why you were here? And he's like, yeah,
pretty much.
All right, well, you were a good friend of mine, so thank you. And then he hops into the TARDIS and buggers off, and that's the end of that. And
yeah,
I really, really liked this short trip. I think it's my favorite story for the whole of Part B this week, actually.
Fair.
What are your thoughts on the Monkey House?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very, very good. I love the stories that are like around somebody else sort of deal. They are indeed my favorite. So yeah, it was honestly there's as always there's very little to say when it comes to the big finish. The Part B stuff is, you know, obviously they're always really, really good, and it just, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I wonder if we should go back to our old format, because Part A is getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah, so it's going to turn out like that.
Yeah, I think it will some point. Just to FYI, guys, this is probably a year away now. When we are finished with New Who and all caught up, we will be moving to a pan sci-fi podcast.
Yes.
So Part B will probably still exist, with it being a Big Finish run. I don't know how long we'll keep it going, but if Big Finish we keep being engaged, I think it'll be around when we do our next podcast, to be honest. With that, guys, we'll catch you all next week. And again, Big Finish's Spotify will be the pinned comment for this week. Catch you all next week.